Dee Dee Bridgewater, and it's my pleasure to take you on a musical journey into world music and jazz. Jazz is world music. Ever since its beginnings in Africa and the southern United States, to its extensions in Europe and Latin America, jazz, since it existed, has always needed an opposite in order to evolve. To me, the blues is at the heart of jazz. Both styles originated in the southern United States about 100 years ago and have been intimately connected ever since.
To me, blues is life as we live it today, as we lived it in the past, as we will live it in the future, because it has to do with people, places, and things. And as long as it has to do with people, places, and things, it will always be as long as there are people, places, and things.
Up the morning, feel around with you. Good about that I got you so. Oh, walking blue, up this morning, I feel around from a shoe. Well, you know, feel me treated. Oh, baby, I don't mind dying. Well, she got everything moving from her head down to her toes. Tell me what she said. Break in on $1 most days. Where she goes. Bring it on you. Yeah, she move it.
In the early 1900s, elements of African-American spirituals and work songs gradually coalesced to form the blues. While the blues can convey a wide range of emotions, it is basically an expression of pain, reflecting the bitterness of poverty and racial oppression. Olu Dara is a Mississippi-born, New York-based musician whose musical style is deeply rooted in the blues tradition.
It's a feeling and it's a language. It's actually a language with a melody and rhythm. For an example, just simple to some, but complex to others, you know? Just this. Now, one sound can give you a feeling what the blues is like. I'm accompanying myself, but the blues actually comes from the voice.
I was brought up in a very, very deep south of Mississippi, and I came up playing the one-string guitar. And I did not know too much about the instrument at that time. Only thing I knew about it, it just sounded good, and I enjoyed doing it. Later on in life, I found out that the one-string instrument that I'm playing right now is deeply rooted into the African culture. A long time ago, I was not able to afford me an instrument. So that's how I came by the one-string guitar. I used to make it upside the wall.
My baby can't stand no cheating, my baby. My baby can't stand no cheating, my baby. Oh no, she can't stand no cheating. Can't stand none of that no nice baby, my baby.
Blues is the father of jazz. Once the African Americans employed the use of European instruments and played out in the public or whatever, it was called jazz. Now, the same musician could go out in public and sing and play guitars with the same concept. It would not be called jazz. It would be called folk music or blues or something. So I think in the beginning, they were playing basically, you know, see? Now this is trumpets, you know, clarinets or whatever, you know. But if without the horns, the singer would do the same thing. It's blues, see?
The blues is an essential ingredient of jazz, and jazz musicians from Louis Armstrong to Miles Davis have always played the blues. Jazz singers like Billie Holiday use the blues to express their innermost feelings.
Treat me right, baby, and I'll stay home every day. Just treat me right, baby, and I'll stay home night and day. But you're so mean to me, baby, I know you're gonna drive me away.
One of the things about music is, you know, especially coming up in jazz, you know, I think the jazz music has that unique quality to adapt to a lot of things, since it was about adapting anyway. It was about adapting to being in a whole new world, and it was about trying to make this world work from where you came from, the people you came from in Africa, and all of a sudden you're thrown into a different place. And so jazz music has those elements in it. And I know for me, starting off, I think the fact that the foundation of the music is in improvisation, it makes you aware of a lot of the things that are around you. And improvisation can be inspired by sounds on the street, other musicians, your whatever it is you're dealing with your life. You know, improvisation is the utterance of one's spirit, of one's soul. I think my music really reflects my life experience. I find that most of the records that I've recorded and most of the songs that I sing, I relate to on some deep level because I've experienced them in some sort of way. And I think that's basically how the blues is born.
Whispering trees echo their sighs, passionate breeze, tender replies, lovers in
before the blues appeared in Mississippi, legendary trumpeter Buddy Bolden is said to have played the blues in New Orleans. And Bolden, whose early experience came from marching bands, is considered to be the first jazz musician. Military-style marching bands swept the world in the 19th century, and New Orleans, with its French, Spanish, and African heritage, produced a unique brass band sound. The spirit of early New Orleans jazz lingers on in the style of modern New Orleans jazz musicians, like trumpeter Nicholas Payton.
The thing I love about New Orleans music in particular is that it always seems to express some type of exuberance or joy, particularly a lot of the early brass band and second line music. Thus the drive and the rhythm of the syncopation and the beat, it just, regardless of what kind of mood you're in or how you're feeling, when you hear those bands, it makes you want to tap your foot or get up and dance or whatever. And to me, that's what music should do.
In New Orleans, marching bands still perform for all sorts of social events. But today, the traditional repertoire of blues, spirituals, marches, and rags is flavored with modern jazz and R&B. The Dirty Dozen Brass Band, with trumpeter Greg Davies and baritone saxophonist Roger Lewis, led the way in updating the New Orleans brass band sound.
Socially, here in New Orleans, the brass bands were a part of daily life for blacks, for black Americans, because this was long before the transistor radios, this was long before the rhythm and blues, so-called rock explosion. They had in New Orleans what they called social and pleasure clubs, these benevolent organizations, and their main purpose was because blacks couldn't buy insurance, so how they would help themselves is get together in these neighborhood organizations, and there were hundreds of them. And if you belonged to one and your house burned down, or somebody died, or you lost your job, or you just needed money for something, this social and pleasure club, benevolent organization came to your rescue if you were a dues-paying member.
It was definitely influenced by the military style, which we're used to hearing a lot of marching bands. But the function of the marching bands was for, they used to play for funerals. You know, they would play a dirge, more or less bringing the body into the funeral home or coming out, more or less. And they would play a series of slow numbers. And then they would do what is called cutting the body loose. Cut the body loose. That's when the body is going to the cemetery or whatever. You know, they do something like maybe play like a spiritual, like just a closer walk with thee. So then after they cut the body loose, the bass drum gives the signal. Boom, boom, And then they play numbers like that, and everyone just has a party and dancing, even people who didn't know the deceased. And everyone comes out of their homes and they drink and they dance and they have a good time. second line is known of the group of people who follow the parade or the funeral procession or what have you. The groove it's almost a combination of military type of march, because you have the snare drum and you have the bass drum, which plays a groove that is very African and Caribbean in rhythm almost, with a heavy accent on the 4. You know,
of the United States, New Orleans once maintained an official distinction between blacks and people of mixed race who were called Creoles of color. One of the greatest Creole musicians was clarinet and soprano saxophonist Sidney Bechet, whose training in the French horn tradition is reflected in his performance of Petit Fleur. In its early days, jazz was considered low-class music, associated with the rough dives and bordellos of Storyville, New Orleans' red light district. Today, jazz has become a New Orleans institution, a tourist attraction in a city whose easygoing atmosphere encourages visitors to let their hair down and party. It was Louis Armstrong, with his colorful personality and brilliant technique, who took jazz out of the New Orleans ghetto and presented it to a worldwide audience.
Anyone finer in the state of Carolina? If there is, then you know, show to me. Dinah, the Dixie blazing, we love the city gazing to the eyes of Dinah Lee. Baby, every night while I shake with fight, cause my dynamite change your mind. Baba did you want to China, baby? I'll have no China, oh baby. Oh, Dinah, Dinah. Oh, Dinah, oh, baby, Dinah Reeves.
Louis Armstrong single-handedly took the trumpet to a whole nother level than it was before him. He invented all kinds of devices. Before him, everyone always thought that the highest note that could be hit on the trumpet was the high C. And then he went to D's, E's, F's, G's. And all the world over, people were amazed, you know, and they would study his horn wherever he went. Louis Armstrong was the greatest jazz soloist, the greatest trumpet virtuoso at that time.
The spirit of Louis Armstrong, the second-line rhythms, and the uplifting melodies of New Orleans are all an inseparable part of jazz. You can still hear the echoes of New Orleans in many of our modern-day jazz tunes.
Well, now they call him the preacher. Hippies got time. He's got a whole lot of gospel that he's spreading around. Well,
As a seaport on the Gulf of Mexico, New Orleans has always had a cultural relationship with the Caribbean, and early jazz had a Latin rhythmic fill that Jelly Roll Morton called the Spanish tinge. Jazz and Latin music have continued to influence each other ever since. In New York City, Afro-Cuban music was adopted by musicians of Puerto Rican descent who gave it the name salsa. In the largely Puerto Rican neighborhood of East Harlem, known as El Barrio, Afro-Cuban music is a part of everyday life. Just as it is in Havana, the rumba, a folk rhythm transplanted to Cuba by African slaves, is performed in the streets. Latin rhythms are also taught in Spanish Harlem schools, like the Harbor Conservatory. One of the first pioneers of Latin jazz was Mario Bauza, who came to the United States from Cuba, played in some of the top jazz bands, and then formed his own Latin band with his brother-in-law, Machito. In 1943, Machito introduced Bauza's composition, Tanga, which is considered to be the first true Latin jazz tune.
Tanga buru'n 거야.
No, excuse me. No, that's the wrong place. You guys missed one. Count them. Count them. Doesn't cost you anything to count them. What costs you is me jumping in your shit every time you mess up. Count them. Don't hurt. Okay? Let's go again. All right, yes, came in too late. Wah, 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 tanga. Right there. You came in like 2 bars late. Ready? Here we go again.
Tanga, encima, 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 encima. Tanga, número moderno. Tanga, vengan a bailar. Tanga.
Please put it away. Please.
Timbales player Tito Puente, a former member of Machito's band, went on to lead the most popular mambo orchestra of the 1950s. 20 years later, he revived a Latin jazz movement that continues to this day.
No, it started in 1930 by Mr. Dizzy Gillespie and Chano Pozzo. See, they were Manteca, Tintendeo, Cubop City, and Dizzy, throughout the years, he always loved our Latin rhythms. So he always tried to get a marriage between Latin music and jazz. And then later on, Machito and the orchestra with Mr. Mario Bauza were the ones that continue that tradition for many, many years. I was involved because as I was a young man, I was playing with them, so I too am involved with it now. I've been traveling the whole world with Latin jazz now, very popular. It's becoming bigger than ever, and I am very happy because I am celebrating now my 50 year as an orchestra leader. My first encounter with jazz, well, I grew up with jazz because I was born in a Spanish Harlem. Well, Latin music was always there, and jazz was there too. But when you grow up in a neighborhood where they have both musics, some sort of is going to get to you. We combine jazz melodies and their harmonies, which are very modern, and people relate to the jazz tunes, and we add our percussion rhythms from the roots in our culture, and there was the marriage come in, and that makes it very exciting.
With the end of the mambo era in the early 60s, Latin big bands gave way to smaller salsa combos, like the one led by pianist Eddie Palmieri. Born in East Harlem, Palmieri combines modern jazz harmonies and improvisations with Afro-Cuban rhythms and dance forms. He opened our music with, whether they call it Latin rock or whatever. He opened Latin music to the world. You know, he did a number that people don't know I was a composer, but he gave me credit as a composer for Oye Como Va. Became very popular. So therefore, it has expanded worldwide, where he's a legend, really a big name, Santana. And I thank him very much for my royalty checks. the rhythms of salsa and Latin jazz come from Cuba, Cuban musicians were isolated after the Cuban Revolution. In the last few years, Cuban music has made a strong comeback with musicians like pianist Chucho Valde, the leader of the fusion group Irakere.
Entonces, con la idea de Irakere, nosotros hicimos un trabajo que enriquecimos ya, o sea, elevamos un poquito más, ¿no? Lo que ya estaba hecho. Nosotros no inventamos nada, sino añadimos a lo que estaba hecho. A partir de Irakere nace, o sea, renace otra vez el camino a un Latin Jazz, pero con raíces más africanas. O sea, tradicional, pero con raíces más africanas, buscando más en la riqueza, ¿no?, rítmica que todavía queda en Cuba, en muchos lugares que no se ha explorado.
Like Cuban music, Brazilian music has strong links to Africa. But while Cuba played an important role in the development of jazz from its early beginnings, Brazil was not discovered by jazz musicians until the early 1960s. Brazil's most famous rhythm is the samba, which can be heard in its pure form at Rio's annual Carnival Parade. Throughout the year, samba schools, actually large social clubs, prepare for the big event. The samba, combined with cool jazz, is the basis for the bossa nova.
this is a samba with very simple harmony.
Yeah.
So this is a samba of they would sing in the streets in Rio and in Bahia. So the bossa nova, they created bossa nova inside of apartments. Was the time that we start having apartments, like buildings and apartments in Rio. So the space, they couldn't bring like 3,000 people inside of the apartments. So they start playing much softer, like. And since everything was soft and silent, they could probably notice the different notes that they could change and make it more beautiful. So instead of doing a chord like that, they started doing like adding a major 7, for example, which made a big difference in bossa nova. Instead of a chord like that, they would play like. So they have changed a little bit things that on the street, for example, you could not notice, but in an apartment with silence, you could notice those little nuances.
Tall and tan and young and lovely, the girl from Ipanema goes walking, and when she passes, each one she passes goes When she walks, she's like a samba that swings so cool and sways so gently, that when she passes, each one she passes goes so sadly.
The bossa nova sound of the 1960s brought Brazilian music to international attention. It reached the peak of its popularity when Antonio Carlos Jobim and João Gilberto got together with American jazz saxophonist Stan Getz. They recorded Jobim's composition, The Girl from Ipanema, sung in English by Astrid Gilberto.
The girl from Ipanema goes walking, and when she passes, he smiles, but she doesn't see.
Another approach to bossa nova is represented by guitarist Baden Powell, one of the great instrumental virtuosos of the bossa era. Baden Powell combined excellent technique with elements of African, jazz, and classical music, especially the works of Brazilian composer Heitor Villa-Lobos. Villalobos also wrote in the instrumental genre called choro, a semi-improvised style that originated in Rio de Janeiro even before the birth of jazz.
Villalobos lived in a time that was the 30s, that have this music called chorinho. That's like a Brazilians trying to emulate classical music. You know, it's like a kind of jive classical, you know. But also they was listening a ragtime at that time coming from America, you know. Then it's a music that is playing in saloons, you know, like with saraus, no, we call. And
yeah, those
like
parties.
That, these parties, and it's very important. And Villalobos grew up with this kind of music called chorinhos. Yeah. Then Romero, we could play one chorinho for them, no? Yeah, experimentation, yeah.
Another Brazilian artist who defies stylistic categories is Hermeto Pascoal. Besides playing all sorts of conventional instruments, Hermeto Pascoal creates original sounds by using everything from sewing machines to grunting pigs.
Como eu falei sempre, vou ficar sempre falando, em cada resposta que eu der, eu vou ficar sempre lembrando que a música é universal. Porque ela tem tudo tem influência de tudo. Qualquer estilo, um estilo sempre tem alguma coisinha do outro. É como a pintura, é como todas as áreas, né? E na minha cabeça, eu já pequeno, já com meus 12 anos, eu já gostava de tocar mais moderno. Eu gostava de já criar uns acordes, umas coisas modernas aqui, mas as pessoas estranhavam. Estavam dançando aí, fazendo assim, por exemplo. Aí quando eu fazia assim... Eu dava um acorde desse, com a sétima maior, aí chegava o dono da casa, da festa, seu Pascoal, não, chama o outro sanfoneiro, que esse rapaz aí, o seu filho lá, tá louco, ele tá fazendo umas coisas lá que eu não tô gostando, não tô entendendo nada. Então eu vou tocar um pouquinho da coisa moderna de hoje, que eu toco, como eu toco oito baixo hoje em dia, né? Então eu faço assim, ó. Isso é lindo, isso aqui é.
Hermeto Pascoal grew up in northeastern Brazil, where he learned such styles as baião, frevo, forró, and chachado. One of the world's most colorful and creative performers, Pascoal inspired a whole generation of Brazilian musicians.
It's this. No. It's a beautiful music experience.
I think that the good thing about this is like everything Ciro will do with playing rock or playing pop music or playing Brazilian music, he always will care, and me too, we always will carry the Brazilian genes, the Brazilian blood here with that accent. So we always have a different type of sound, you know, even if he doesn't want, it's going to sound different. And this is important for us to carry this for our whole life and just show people different approach to different situations in music. So that's the important thing. Always be yourself and bring your culture always to
Your
everything
roots.
you do.
Play your roots.
Your roots. Yeah, that's it.
Esse som é pra bater no seu baile, você vai curtir comigo e vai dançar todo mundo aí, porque nesse barato, nesse esperto.
With its vast territory and its huge multi-ethnic population, Brazil is a treasure house of musical styles, from traditional to contemporary. Today, progressive musicians like Carlinhos Brown are blending Afro-Brazilian rhythms with the latest jazz and hip-hop sounds. From its early origins in Mississippi and New Orleans to the Caribbean and Brazil, jazz has come a long way. Though mingling with all types of different music, today's musical fusions are only a foretaste of what is to come.